Hey, good morning and welcome everybody to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Robert Phoenix here, adjusting his mic, broadcasting to you live from, let me get it right there, South Central Texas, the capital of the state, Austin. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's a wonderful 71 degrees out here in the capital city. Traffic messed up as usual, clogged up like your lower intestine after eating a big dose of Texas barbecue. But don't worry, Armageddon's on the way. But you'll be safe if you repent. Hey, what's happening out there? We are just past 9/11. It is 9/13. Actually, it's 9:04 here, but 9/13 is the date. And I was reading Yoichi Shamitsu, the fine journalist, and he made some really interesting points about 9/11 and this particular 9/11. Apparently, there are a number of families that are connected to 9/11, and even some people that aren't connected to 9/11 that are suing the Saudis, because there was a bill that recently passed that allowed people to go back and sue. Let me find the article. I'm going to read this to you. It's kind of an interesting little wrinkle here. And one of the things that happened over the last weekend, where we had, of course, Irma, big Irma. I had a cousin named Irma, and I had an aunt named Irma, Aunt Irma. She's my grandmother's sister, Aunt Irma. And she had a daughter. And guess what she named her? She named her Irma. How about that? Okay. Let me see if I can find this piece, because I think you'll... Here we go. Again, Yoichi Shimatsu. This is a hurricane of media disinfo blew away key 9/11 anniversary. So I'm going to read these... couple of paragraphs here. When Irma made landfall on the continental USA at 5 p.m. on Sunday, September 10, at Naples, Florida, the greatest storm ever, a big lie if ever, was by then winding down to a Category 2, despite a week of hysterical predictions and unprecedented damage to the Sunshine State. The first near casualties were 2 manatees stuck in the mud when the waters retreated from Sarasota Bay due to low air pressure, and they were soon saved. Before reaching Tampa, the media-hyped unprecedented storm was a listless Category 1, soon thereafter downgraded to a tropical storm. I'd like to think that we might have had something to do with that. With our navigation and dissipation intention. I'd like to think we had something to do with that. Why don't we just think that we have something to do with that? Let's just go with that. Let's empower it and build on it for the next looming disaster, which shall be right around the corner anytime soon. On the following day, the major news media kept churning out horror stories from Florida with repeated coverage of a fatal road crash. That sad death fits the category of man bites dog. News to be relegated to page 16 since it marked the state's lowest number of highway fatalities for a single day. According to the Florida DMW, the average daily death toll is 10 drivers, pedestrians, motorcyclists, and bicyclists. How about that? A storm of fake news headlines blared total devastation, even though a closer look at photos of strewn sheet metal from Kmart tool sheds showed undamaged houses standing intact in the background. News reports of prefab cottages and mobile homes displaced by the storm surge. It is a no-brainer when these boxes lack a standard foundation. Online deception, some of it skillfully photoshopped, showed a shark swimming over a highway and a picture of a flooded downtown Miami, which was actually taken at the Miami River. The hurricane of fake news, which included false sightings of tornadoes, was abetted by a massive power blackout. The outage affecting 1 million homes inexplicably overcame the state even before the weakening storm made landfall, preventing residents from showing or seeing the much less frightening reality on the ground. Hurricane Irma was a classic case of fake news. A media-vilified Rush Limbaugh is completely exonerated for exposing Irma as a global warming-inspired media hoax. Speaking of which, I got to interject here. So yesterday I was walking around Town Lake, which is the big lake in the center of Austin. It's a beautiful lake. And I just like seeing sort of the little bits and pieces of nature. And I walk, I don't run. I watch a lot of people run. And boy, they look really... A lot of these people running are struggling. I used to run a lot. I was a big runner when I was younger. But my back does not allow me to run. So I walk and I take in things. One of the things I love, and I'm going to get back to this, one of the things I love at Town Lake is I love looking at the snapping turtles. Because they have a lot of them there. And I like to watch them do nothing. I like to watch them sun themselves or just kind of float together in the water. And they're always hanging out in a pack. What do you call a pack of turtles? What is that? Does anybody out there know that? Like, is it a pod or something? Anyway, so I'm walking around the lake and I hear this conversation behind me. It's these two women. And this woman says, they said that the hurricanes are only going to get worse due to global warming. They said that this latest storm had something to do with the eclipse. They said that a lot of women tend to have children right around the full moon. It was like 3 instances of they said. I just, I had to keep my mouth shut. It's like, who is they? It's just a classic example. They. Have people like just given up on the quest of thinking for themselves? It's like we've subcontracted our ability to have critical thinking to some other agency. We've just subcontracted that out. It's kind of like that part of our mind has become so disassociated that somebody else is taking care of that for us. And in some ways, I kind of understand it because look at what's happened with the internet. We have all these things, all these suites of services that do things for us. We have apps that do all these things for us. We don't use a map anymore. We use an app, right? There are just so many things that we don't normally do that we used to do. It's all subcontracted out for us. So why wouldn't our critical thinking and our ability to discern the truth be subcontracted out as well? There's an app for that. It was really fascinating to hear that conversation. Okay. Let me keep going here. Hurricane Irma was a classic case of fake news. A media-vilified Rush Limbaugh is completely exonerated for exposing Irma as a global warming-inspired media hoax. The radio host deserves an apology from the mainstream core of professional liars. What's even more disturbing than the climate change propaganda is the date of that Monday after Irma pooped out. September 11th, this year's remembrance was an especially important anniversary when hundreds of injury victims from the World Trade Center attack are suing the FBI for disclosure of 80,000 classified files on the Saudi role in the attack. Operation Irma was not just a media stunt. It is a sacrilege against the memory of 9/11 victims and a cynical insult to their surviving kin. Home field of Al Qaeda Air Force. Florida is the home state of Governor Jeb Bush, who immediately after 9/11 flew aboard a USAF C-130, with 2 truckloads of files from Rudy Decker's Huffman Aviation in Venice, Florida, and Naples, where 9/11 terror suspects Mohammed Atta and Marwan el-Shahai received flight training. Another flight school in Venice, owned by a fellow Dutchman, Arne Kruithof, taught 6 other 9/11 suspects how to fly. Now, there's no planes. So I have to just, there were no planes. No planes, sorry. They did the flying, they took the courses so that they could leave a paper trail. So the documents are there, but let's disabuse ourselves of the notion that there were any planes. There were no planes. Sorry. I'm not saying people didn't die. I'm not saying that the towers didn't come down. They did. But there are no planes. Here we go. Here's more. Venice Airfield was also the base for Britannia Aviation, which provided repair and other aircraft services for Carib Air, a CIA propriety company used for covert operations, including drug shipments from Latin America. Instead of its scheduled rendezvous with an FBI team in Washington, D.C., Jeb Bush's plane landed in Northern Virginia to safely deliver the incriminating documents to the CIA headquarters in Langley, McLean. The CIA continues to suppress the disclosure of that trove of treason. Israeli art students in the Sunshine State. Aside from the funding and planning by the Saudi royals, 9/11 truth advocates have also uncovered a web of Israeli connections to the demolition of the World Trade Center. Saudi-Israeli cooperation to hoodwink Americans should come as no surprise, since their bilateral alliance was a major factor during the Afghan war against Soviet occupation starting in 1979. The cooperation between Riyadh and Tel Aviv continued in their containment of Iran against Hezbollah-connected Lebanese diamond traders in West Africa. These joint projects involved the late Osama bin Laden and his team of Sunni radicals labeled as Al-Qaeda. Following 9/11, the FBI rounded up and expelled 60 Israeli art students working undercover for the Mossad spy agency in Hollywood, Florida, where Atta and Marwan had rented an apartment. Far from investigating terrorism, which might have prevented the WTC attack, the Israel spies were themselves part of the terrorist planning and logistics behind the 9/11 deception. The Florida governor was, of course, the brother of George W. Bush, who stood to gain the most from 9/11 events. It comes as no surprise, then, that Jeb, who currently resides in Florida, was also vocal in exaggerating the strength of incoming Hurricane Irma. He has no excuse, not after dealing with 9 hurricanes as Florida governor, including the 1992 landfall of Andrew, a genuine Category 5 storm, and the most powerful recorded in the U.S. as compared to the much hyped but underperforming Irma LaDouche. Buried at Camp David, Operation Irma also kept Donald Trump and his cabinet hostage inside a Camp David bunker, where they received the clone treatment, preventing the president from public discussion of the Saudi documents needed for the current 9/11 victims' legal proceedings, and what he learned from the Saudi legal authorities on his state visit to Riyadh in mid-May. His disclosure of those bombshell revelations at the 9/11 memorial on the 16th anniversary would have been the first high-level breach corroborating what many truthers suspect, that the demolition of the WTC was an inside job involving many and perhaps most of the same candidates that he soundly defeated in the 2016 primary and presidential election. You know, Trump, he just went right after Jeb Bush. Basically said, man, stay in your lane or I'm going to bring up 9/11 and your brother. And that was it. He was done. Jeb Bush was done. Oh my God. You know, Trump is, I feel sorry for Trump now. I feel sorry for the guy. I was watching InfoWars, and which I do. Like I said, I got to keep my eye on the competition. And they were talking about how Trump's bodyguard was forced to resign. And you know, when I first heard that, I was like, oh wow, that's heavy, right? Because this is the guy that's had Trump's back for years. Personal bodyguard, probably one of the few guys that Trump is actually like really close friends with. His bodyguard. Bodyguard's done. He's gone. Gone. They wouldn't even let him. They wouldn't even let him talk to Trump after they said you're done. Trump is so isolated right now. His daughter can't even come see him. How about that? His own daughter, whether you like Ivanka or not, whether you dig her politics, which are pretty much far left of center, or not. Maybe it's a good thing she's not there, but it's his daughter. She can't go see him. Well, if she does see him and talk to him, she's got to fill out a report to detail what they talked about. Is this not 1984? And by the way, does she really need to fill out a report? I mean, there's probably microphones all over the damn place. So they're recording every single conversation he has. The report is just a formality. The report is an obeisance to the system of management and control. That's it. What do you think they're going to do with that report? She could put anything in that report. Oh, we talked about the kids. Oh, we talked about mom. Oh, we talked about this. We talked about that. Blah, 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 blah. You think she's really going to sit down and say, well, what we really talked about is that son of a bitch McMaster. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, is she really going to put that on the report? No. But they've got the White House completely wired for sound. So the report is just a formality in a form of degradation for Ivanka. Omarosa, whatever you think of Omarosa, she can't even see Trump anymore. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I have no comment about that. But clearly he likes her. Clearly he likes this woman. Some people think she's a tranny, that she's a he. I don't know. I have no comment about that. But if that's the case, she's a much more attractive tranny than Michelle Obama. And I don't have any problem with that either. But she can't go see him. He likes her. He likes Omarosa. He's locked down. And I feel sorry for the guy. I really do. They have isolated him. They have basically cut off every single access and exit because he put, somebody put Mike Flynn in the driver's seat there. Steve Bannon has been going off on what's happening inside the Trump White House, what's happening in America, what's happening in the world. And Steve Bannon is incredibly articulate. He stood, and I don't agree with everything that Bannon brings to the table. He is a unrepentant Zionist, and he loves Israel because Israel is this model of nationalism, hardcore nationalism with hardcore borders, self-determined, capitalistic, using every single square inch of that country to their advantage, whatever it is. And he believes that that's admirable. I don't agree with Bannon to that extent. You know. But he's a truth teller, and I do agree with some things he talks about and some things he says. I don't agree with everything, though. So let's just, not that he cares. I'm sure Steve Bannon's losing sleep over it, right? God, Robert Phoenix doesn't agree with everything I say. Maybe I should rethink this Israel thing. Yeah, I think, thanks, Robert. I mean, come on now. Bannon would actually make, in some ways, a really good president. I mean, could you imagine him addressing people? It's far more articulate than Trump. Bannon could rival, I think, Obama for speechifying. And man, Obama, he was the master of the teleprompter. Am I right? That dude had the teleprompter so down, it was so fluid. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. He was so... it was almost like he had embedded the teleprompter inside of himself. And he was great at it. And Obama overcame his stuttering over the course of his presidency. I guess if you do something long enough, you'll overcome whatever kinds of disadvantages or human error, quirks, whatever. I've been doing this for 10 years now. And I'm still trying to get better at it, though. Okay, so where are we? We're truth. We're into the truth. We're into the truth and truth busting. I thought about this the other day. I was like, what do we do here? What are we doing? What are we doing in this lifetime right now? Because it's pretty clear now that whatever happened with Trump in this, what we call the quote-unquote populist movement. It's ended with Trump. It's done. It is absolutely done. When Michael Flynn was ousted by, apparently, Michael Flynn was ousted by, what's his name? Jared. Yeah. Secret Agent 666 got Mike Flynn out of there. That was the first thing he did. He conspired with Mike Pence to get Michael Flynn out of there. And that was just the first domino that fell. And everything else since then, the only guy that's left standing is Stephen Miller. And I guess Sarah Sanders Huckabee. Well, I actually think it's pretty interesting. She's good. That girl is confident. She is extremely confident. But I believe it's over for Trump now because he's too isolated. The generals have cordoned him off, and according to Jones, he's being sedated, which means that his capacity to actually be an effective president is going to become more and more in question. Or perhaps he's just got a very defective clone, whatever that is. So where are we now with all of this? Where are we? You know, back when Trump was being, when the machine was revving, you know, right, in the run up to the election, the primaries, when that was happening, there's an awakening taking place. There's an awakening. And it was an uncomfortable awakening. All of a sudden now, people who had, and this is where, okay, this is this fine line, this really, really fine line. It is the razor-thin Maginot line that exists in the mind. Because there are a group of people, a large group of people in this country who have kept their mouths shut for years because they didn't want to piss people off. They didn't want to lose friends. They didn't want to lose family. You know, they didn't want to cause any kind of uproar. And what Trump did is he untied their tongues. And he untied their tongues at the ballot box. That's what he did. He untied their tongues at the ballot box. Now, some people believe that what Trump did was he gave credence to unlock the inner bigot and the inner racist of every person who voted for him. Now, one would make this assumption that only white people voted for Donald Trump, when in fact that is not the case at all. Not every white person in America voted for Donald Trump. There were white people in America that voted for Hillary Clinton. There were white people in America that decided that they wanted to scrawl Bernie Sanders' name on a ballot. There were white people in America that voted Green Party. Not every white person in America voted for Donald Trump. Not every black person in America voted for Hillary Clinton. Guess what? There were black people, brown people, yellow people, whatever kind of people. There were pink people. They voted for Donald Trump too. Okay? Let's be clear about that. Does that automatically turn all of those people, no matter what their genetic origin or what their sexual persuasion or lifestyle persuasion or whatever, does that automatically turn them into white supremacists? You automatically become a white supremacist because you voted for Donald Trump. And where in the Trump manifesto is any kind of white supremacy championed? All the people inside of the Trump administration who had anything to do with nationalism are gone. It's Stephen Miller and probably Sarah Sanders Huckabee, and that's about it. Everybody else has been replaced by globalists and Obama holdovers. But what happened during that time is that Trump untied the tongues of certain people, and their tongues spoke inside of the ballot box. But there's a reverberating effect here. Now remember, astrologically, we've been in Saturn in Sagittarius. And it's going away. It's moving into Capricorn. And we've got just a couple months of Saturn in Sag. And to be honest with you, I'm going to miss Saturn in Sag. I actually like Saturn in Sag because Saturn is muscle, man. Saturn is like putting the shovel into the ground. Wherever Saturn is in your chart, you put the shovel in the ground every single day with Saturn. So we're either shoveling through the bullshit to get to the truth, or we're shoveling truth with Saturn in Sagittarius. And that's why it's been such a big deal. We are in a cage match for the First Amendment, where certain people theoretically have the copyright of truth, and other people, because of their so-called privilege, or their so-called persuasion, or their so-called hidden bigotry, do not have the same access to those inalienable rights. And it's bullshit. We all have it. We all rise and fall because of it. And you can make a stupid-ass comment like Jamel Hill did and call Trump a white supremacist. And she can do that. That's the beauty of the Constitution. It allows her to do that. Jamel Hill is a sportscaster on ESPN. It's a product of Disney. Disney owns ESPN. Disney owns ESPN, they own ABC, and they own a host of other properties, networks, websites. It is a major MTV. It's a major media empire programming tool. And ESPN has basically been trying to take the millennials who are into sports and feed them political content. See, the thing about being young, and this is what we lose sight of when we get up into the get off my lawn years. The thing about being young is that it is part of our inalienable birthright to rebel when we're young. It starts off at 14 with the Saturn opposition. The first Saturn opposition in the chart. Boom, 14. Correct? And then we get the next Saturn square to Saturn. And that happens around 21, 22, and then we get the Saturn return. So those are really important times. Because as individuals, we are redefining ourselves against our families, against our culture, against our religion. We're becoming people unto ourselves, and we're moving away. The umbilicus is stretching, and it's about to snap. The psychic umbilicus is about to snap. So then what happens is that young people begin to question things. It's important. It's important. And then what happens is that and listen, we live in a mediated reality. We've been living in a mediated reality for centuries. It's only become so dense and palpable over the last 15 years because the internet has given us a glimpse, a brief little crack in the wall behind the facade of reality. But it's been going on for a long time. Go back to the 60s, MK Ultra, the Laurel Canyon, the mind control. It really started in the 1950s, to be honest with you, in a big way. It gets cranked up in the 60s. And you have a group of young people who are questioning things, which they should. And then guess what happens? As their consciousness cracks open, here are these outside forces, these third parties that are just pouring the contents in. Okay, here you go. Your mind is cracked open, your consciousness cracked open. Let's fill it up with this, which is popular culture. And popular culture, for the last 50 years, has been driven by the military-industrial complex, the corporate state, and key individuals and groups who want to control your mind, your spending, your habits. First, they pump you up on how sex is great. Sex, 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 sex. We love sex. We love women. We love men. Sex, sex, sex. Sexual revolution. And then all of a sudden, that program changes. 50 years later, it's like, ooh, man, sex is still great, but guess what? Sex with this person and this person may not be that great, but this person might be even better. Whatever, they just change the narrative. Because what they want to do is they want to get in and just flip those switches. This is what's been happening. And it's been happening to young people for a long time. So ESPN comes in and they say, let's grab the millennials. They're here, they're questioning things. They're questioning a lot of things. And they should. They absolutely should question a lot of things because that's what they're supposed to do. That is the raison d'etre of youth. But then what does ESPN pour inside their head? And I've been following ESPN for a long time. I'm a sports fan. And I can tell you that they have a massive social agenda. Massive. You could put ESPN right into this interstitial relationship with MTV. When Bruce Jenner decided to become Caitlyn Jenner, ESPN fell all over. They tripped all over themselves to sell this because Bruce Jenner was a high-profile athlete. So he falls into their bucket, into their territory, their media demographic to some respect. But I'll tell you, if Bruce Jenner had not been married to Kris Kardashian, that generation wouldn't even know who Bruce Jenner was. I mean, Bruce Jenner was a big deal when I was in high school. I used to train at the YMCA in Santa Clara, California. And Bruce Jenner was in the same weight room, hanging out, lifting, doing his thing. That's where he trained. That's how long ago it was. But ESPN wasted no time, absolutely no time, in order to fete Caitlyn Jenner. Because this is where they wanted to sculpt the mind of their young audience. And they're not the only ones. The millennials are a significant group. There are a lot of them. And advertisers, beyond advertisers, I mean, look at the Strong Cities Initiative and Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. You go to these town meetings, where they're trying to push their beautiful vision, for the Kingdom of Oz, the Emerald Kingdom, right? Which is really nothing more than code for the Small Cities Initiative. It's right there in the Wizard of Oz. We're off to see the wizard. It's the Emerald Kingdom. It's green, right? It's sustainable. And everybody's the same. You go to these meetings, these town meetings, and they're talking about millennials. We're going to create the cities that millennials love. They don't like to drive. Hey, no worries. We'll outlaw cars. And if you're going to have a car, guess what? It's going to drive you. And they'll love it because they'll get to play their video games. They'll get to zone out and do virtual. Think of this, right? They get to be in a car that drives itself and they get to wear VR goggles while the car is driving. And the car arrives at the destination. They pop their VR goggles out and they go, oh, I'm here now. But somewhere inside the brain that's like, hey, isn't this cool? I'm driving down the road and I'm in a completely different reality. And I don't have to worry about anything. And I'm not even in the driver's seat. I'm in the passenger seat. And the thing is, I'm in the driver's seat. This thing's driving itself, right? So they're into making these cities based on the needs and the psychographics of the millennials. They're building these cities based on that. That's a lot of power. They're like leveraging our future and how we're going to live based on the needs and wants and predilections and psychographics of a group. And they may not even be really convinced or even believing that that's the case, but that's what they're using to sell it. This is what ESPN is doing. So Jemele Hill comes out and calls, she's got a show with Michael Smith called The Six. Oh, The Six, isn't that cool? It's not even Sports Center, it's called The Six. And Jemele Hill's a bright young woman. I've followed Jemele Hill for a long time, believe it or not. I used to watch her on shows with Skip Bayless, and I think she's really bright. She's a bright young woman. And she went forward on Twitter and called Trump a white supremacist. And a lot more than that. So ESPN has distance themselves from Jemele Hill's comments. Jemele went a step too far, but probably not far enough, because Jemele Hill will continue to have her job. She'll continue to have her job. It was really funny. I've been watching this guy Tommy Sotomayor. It is a trip. If you haven't found Tommy Sotomayor, I recommend finding. The guy's funny. He's really, really funny, and he doesn't pull any punches. And it was Tommy is he's interesting. He's really interesting. He can get away with saying things. He's a black man, right? That's what he is. He's a black man who's into the truth, and he cuts it hard and raw. And I was watching this thing this morning, and I just stumbled upon him. Well, I've known about him for a while, but I stumbled upon this one. He does these live streams, and it's like, who gets to say what in our society? Who gets to say what? And he has this hierarchy of who gets away with saying things. And in his hierarchy, he says that the person who has the most power, who can get away with saying anything they want, is a black female. They can get away with anything, right? And he said maybe the only thing that outranks a black female is a black lesbian female. It is very explicit. He's very sharp about this. And he says, well, who's on the bottom? It is the white Christian male. And so he goes through all these different levels in the hierarchy of who gets to say what. It's very enlightening and very funny. And here we go. Jemele Hill is going to prove, she's going to prove Tommy Sotomayor's thesis. Because Jemele Hill, I seriously doubt anything is going to happen to Jemele Hill. Seriously doubt it. There are already people that are falling in line saying she's right. But where is the white supremacy thing with Trump? I don't get this. I don't get this at all. You know, when this whole bullshit Charlottesville, synthetic, the psychological operation known as Charlottesville went down, Trump said he was castigated because he saw aggression and anger on both sides. Where is that not the truth? If anything, the right was not doing the white was not doing the white, whatever. They weren't doing the aggression. It was coming from Antifa and the left. And by the way, people saw the KKK and Antifa get off the same buses. The same buses. Infiltration, COINTELPRO, synthetic psychological operation, a psyop. But if you look at it on the surface and say, okay, Trump took the middle ground, took the middle way, and said they were both angry. They were both aggressive. And that makes him a white supremacist because he saw aggression on both sides? Give me a break. So what we have here is we're in a cage match for the First Amendment speaking power or truth to power. That's where we are. This is it. This is the biggest sort of battle line that we have at this point in time. And what Trump did when he got elected is he untied some tongues. And now all of a sudden people are saying things, or they're not agreeing to the same kind of consensus reality that existed prior to the election. And it is a really, really, really difficult exercise for people to speak truth to power, because they have got to get over certain pieces inside of themselves. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. I might be considered a racist or a homophobe or a misogynist, or, you know. And at the same time, they got to be really, really, they got to turn that laser beam on inside themselves and really look at their attitudes at the same time. It's like, you know, where am I on this? Is this really something that's going to be racist? Is this really something that's going to be called misogynistic or homophobic or whatever, right? That process has got to take place inside each and every one of us. Not because we don't want to be found out, but because we want to know what the truth is. And so we have to get into that place inside of ourselves so we can distill it down. And say, no, this doesn't fly. This is not going to work. We're not going to be held hostage by things like guilt and recrimination. Because the permission to speak truth to power is out there. And it's available to anybody. And you may not agree with it. I don't agree with Jamel Hill. She can talk, she can say whatever she wants. But then I have the right to say what I want, and you can say, screw you, Robert Phoenix, I don't agree with you. I'm going to stop listening to your 30 minutes a day. And that's your right. And you can walk away from that. And go find somebody else if that's the case. We have the right. And when they take that right away, whether it's explicit or implicit, whether they redirect your traffic on YouTube, keep your hits down, whatever that is, or they come right out and say, you are censored, then we're in trouble. And we have 1 foot dangling off the edge. And the reason why this is happening now is because people are waking up. We're waking up. Truth has no color. It has no race. Truth is truth. And that's the way it is. And if we can sit down and look at ourselves in the mirror, and have a truthful dialogue with our inner self, without diluting ourselves, without pumping ourselves up, and guess what? We're all on our way towards liberating not just ourselves from the social constraints that have held us down for years, but we're on our way to liberating ourselves from the very corrupt system that has created these mind-forged manacles and given us the key to unlock it. And we never knew that we had it. No, they didn't give us the key. They gave us the manacles. We've always had the key. We've always had the key. So I asked myself, what are we doing here? What are we doing in this plane of reality? What are we doing in this time? What am I doing 30 minutes a day? Well, I came down to basically 2 words. Reality busting. That's what we're doing. We are reality busting. And I've never seen a more concentrated and focused effort in my entire lifetime. And it's exciting. I have to tell you, it can be very frustrating, but it's exciting. And everybody's going through it. It's not just one group. Everybody's going through it. You know, Colin Kaepernick, who I have had, quite a few things to say about it. Even Colin Kaepernick is going through his level of reality busting. He's trying to look at things. He's trying to understand why things are the way they are. And why certain conditions get propagated again and again and again over time. I'd love to interview Colin Kaepernick. I'd love to have him on my show. I'd love to be able to spend an hour talking to him. But he doesn't do interviews now. He just tweets. He doesn't do interviews. It's interesting. So good to be alive, isn't it? Really, I mean, this is an amazing time. If I know there's a lot of BS out there. I know it can be very heavy. But this is an amazing time to be alive because we're now all engaged in some level of active participation with personal and social transformation. And you may not agree with another person's version of it, and they may not agree with your version of it, but guess what? We're in it together. And it's this pushing and pulling against the tide. Will it lead to a civil war? Will it lead to collapse of the United States? I don't know. But at the very least, we have the opportunity to address this stuff in a way that we've never, ever, ever addressed it before. And there'll be casualties. There'll be roadkill on the highway of truth. Trust me on that. And it already has been. But the ultimate destination is worth it. Because the ultimate destination is to understand the nature of this reality that has been co-created to a large extent by our own consent. We are not victims. We consented to be here. We consented to participate at this level. And now we're choosing to either consent or not consent. That is the greatest power that each and every one of us has. And we have to exercise it every single day of our lives. And when we lose sight of that, when we go on autopilot, we're in trouble. We don't have the luxury of being on autopilot anymore. You don't just get a medal for showing up. Participation is required. All right. That's it. That felt like a flame today, didn't it? I think it did. I hope I didn't singe too many feathers out there. All right, we'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from today. I'll be down in Houston this weekend at New Paracon, and you'll be able to hear more of this if you want, with an emphasis on some other subjects and topics that are astrologically related. So you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you are you.